Black people are not inherently violent people that wages a war against police. The fact is that in the U.S., most violent crimes are committed by white people, and most cops are killed by white people. The clearest glimpse we had of who the white society truly are is what we saw on January 6th, when thousands of white people violently attacked the Capitol, beating police officers and literally smearing shit on the walls of the Capitol. For the first time, we were seeing them behind that white image makeover they've given themselves, that facade by feeding white exalting narratives into our society that our society function based upon. Okay, I digress. Where was I? As I was saying, black people are not inherently violent people that wages a war against the police. The fact is, most violent crimes are committed by white people, and most cops are killed by white people. The largest recipient of welfare are not black women. It's actually white women. Black people are not the largest benefactors of affirmative action either. White women are. Therefore, by extension, the largest benefactors of affirmative action are in fact white people. Black people are also not the leeches of society that have benefited from the great minds of Caucasians, as so many want you to believe. The truth is, in fact, the exact opposite. It is that most inventions that have revolutionized the world were either invented by black people or were directly inspired by an early invention by black people. So therefore, it is white people that have benefited most by the great minds of black people. Your perception of reality is an elaborate white deception created by false narratives that have been fed into our society. The white society keeps us believing the fraudulent worst about ourselves because it makes us much more compliant with white dominance over our lives. Whenever those in positions of power wants to brainwash an entire generation of people to think and behave as they want them to, they always heavily demoralize them. This divides them, makes them self-loathing, and it shifts their collective aggressions away from their oppressors and redirects it against themselves. They can then be ruled over forever. This is precisely the psychological warfare tactic that the white society deploys unrelentingly against black people. And it's so obvious that it's only by not critically thinking that it cannot be seen. When critically thinking, it then becomes very clear just how cartoonishly unrealistic it actually is that virtually all information that black people receive from white sources about ourselves are consistently negative and black racially demoralizing. It's fraudulent propaganda. The white society falsely negatively distorts virtually everything that black people believe about ourselves, regardless of how cartoonishly unrealistic the scenario actually is, because it shapes our collective minds in ways that benefit the system of white supremacy. You see, people are inherently tribal, okay, and do not naturally accept the long-term dominance of other racial groups over their lives. People must be manipulated to do so. Throughout history, oppressors have often met this objective by keeping the oppressed demoralized, okay, by systematically inundating the oppressed with fraudulent negative information about themselves. Doing so creates self-loathing and division amongst the oppressed, which makes the oppressed more compliant with the dominance of other groups over their lives. It's a well-proven social science tactic used for controlling large populations. This is the same psychological warfare tactic that white oppressive forces deploys against their black populations. This system is deployed like a massive media marketing campaign that constantly subjects the black population to receiving only the fraudulent worst narratives about ourselves. Within this system, fraudulent black racially demoralizing disinformation is being pumped unrelentingly into the unsuspecting minds of the black population without being challenged or counterbalanced by an equal amount of black positive racially affirming information. It conveys the subliminal message that black people are our own worst enemies and we therefore need whites to govern over our lives. Moreover, that black people should admire, respect, and trust only whites. This system is extremely effective because when black people are repetitively presented these noted narratives from trusted white media sources, it can be very difficult to resist its implied propaganda programming, especially when the propaganda is being told daily and so unrelentingly. With time, being able to refute the constant negative information about us, many of us become besieged by it and we eventually come to accept it. They demoralize us to such an extent that we begin to doubt our ability to govern ourselves, and we therefore become more compliant with white dominance over our lives. This propaganda campaign is in fact so effective that in many cases it causes black people to even prefer white dominance over our lives. It's the true reason why many black people are now self-loathing, perceive ourselves as being our own worst enemies, and reveres Caucasians in spite of such a horrific history of oppression. This control system utilizes the immense power that shame has upon the human mind to mentally enslave millions of black people. Those black people who don't critically think never notice their mental change. White social scientists describe this insidious black brainwashing system as merely instilling a value system into the collective minds of black people that makes us adhere to the authority and existing infrastructure of the white dominant society. It's how they protect themselves from massive unified black retribution. This is the absolute truth of our plight and condition, but they've brainwashed millions of us to reject it and to hate those who speaks it in preference for a biblical fairy tale and a silly slave syndrome myth. So some black people don't want to know the truth because accepting it, the truth requires that they do something about it. So they try to pretend they haven't heard it. But nonetheless, once you've been taught the truth, it cannot be unlearned. Once you've heard the truth, it cannot be unheard. Once you've seen the truth, it cannot be unseen. Because a mind once expanded to a greater radius by the truth never returned back to its original smaller size because the truth won't allow it to. The truth changes you. It is in this way that black liberating truth is like a virus within the system of white supremacy. It changes the minds. This is the true reason why whenever black people post true black liberating information, Facebook blocks it, Twitter deletes it, Google hides it, YouTube bans it, the mainstream media censors it, and the white government forbids it. They literally censor all true black liberating information in order to keep us mentally enslaved. Because they know once we gain a proper understanding of how this works and what they're doing to us, we'll then develop the counter strategies to liberate ourselves. One love and peace, brothers and sisters. One love and peace.